5:48.
5:48, excellent. Welcome all to the 2012 Annual General Meeting of Linux Australia. We'll run through this pretty quickly since I'm guessing a lot of you probably want to go to the PDNS. I'll mention it now so I don't forget. There's buses at 6:15 if we're really fast, or 6:45 just out at the usual bus stop heading across to the PDNS venue. Welcome. Hope everyone is having a good time at LCA. I know I'm very much enjoying it. Apologies for my voice. It's decided to start going in the last couple of hours. Okay, let's get straight into it. First up on the agenda is the confirmation of the meeting minutes of the 2011 AGM.
Other computer.
Other computer, yes. Yes, there we go. There's a couple of copies down here if people want to have a read. It's basically what went up in the Linux.conf.au website a couple of months back. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes of the last AGM as presented on the agenda. Second. All in favour? Any against? No. Passed. I won't say unanimously because not all the hands went up. Oh yes, there's a register of attendance going around. If you can put your name on it. Do we need names and email addresses, Pete?
Yes.
Yes, names and email addresses, please. Awesome. Okay, second one is, as you will all know, we had an SGM this year as well to cover off some constitutional issues as well as the presentation of the Treasurer's report that we weren't able to do last year. That's the same document. There's some copies at the front again. It's the same document that was in the minutes and it was emailed to the list. Move a motion that we accept the minutes of the 2011 SGM. Seconded to Julian Goodwin. All in favour? Against? No against. Passed. Abstain? Oh, one abstention. Thank you, Donna. Wrong computer. And let me put this back up here so I know what we're doing. Excellent. Okay, next up we've got reports from the 2011 office bearers. First up, we may as well do the President's report since I'm already up here. Let me pull my President's report up there. And I'll pull it. It is there? Excellent. Go to stand here. I mailed this to the list sometime last week. I'll just do a really, really quick run through. Council met 20 times this year by phone conference and once at a face-to-face in Sydney. We had some council changes this year. Mary Gardner resigned in July due to the work that she was putting into the ADA initiative and no longer had the time. At that stage, the council appointed James Polly to fill the vacancy as an OCM. As mentioned before, we met in January. We met in, what was it there? We had an SGM to make some constitutional amendments. This mainly came out of wanting to move the financial year so that we can easily get the audit in time for the actual AGM, which we just managed to sneak in this year by the skin of our teeth. I was talking to the auditor this morning. Going through that process meant we had to change the constitution, so we basically adopted the model rules, changed the financial year on top of the model rules, then adopted the model rules effectively for current best practice and the changes that had been made to the old constitution for all the things that still made sense to the organisation, as well as some things around free membership fees. The way the model rules work, we can't really remove members unless they pay membership fees, so we had to put some stuff in there around free membership fees. Council also did some work this year on a value statement and a number of policies. The policy work is ongoing. I'll go over the values first. We did a lot of talking about it at the council meeting on the list, and then we posted some stuff through to the mailing list, I think once, maybe twice, to get community feedback. There's details up on the website, but it mainly came down to values of open technology, community, freedom, respect, diversity, and that's all of them, I think. And I think that it's given us a really... What? Oh, the comments are still there. Let me... You want to... Yeah, close those. Just go... Actually, if you go up to the top... Oh, no, where's the clicky box? Can you go full screen mode or something? Or do that? I think the values have actually been really positive for us. They've helped us on the council immensely in terms of being able to help us write our other policies and dealing with some of the things that we have to deal with on the council. The other policies that we produced this year were the subcommittees policy. We've had our first subcommittee, first LUG come on as a subcommittee being SLUG. I think SLUG is now a subcommittee. They're still finalising some of the stuff of not actually being a real association anymore, but that'll happen in the due course of time. We've also formalised the subcommittees themselves a bit more. There's a couple we've got which are up on the list. We scroll up a bit. Okay, cool. There's a list of subcommittees further down. Actually, I'll get to that when I get there. Josh also finished off the expenses policy and the financial accounts process. With the move that we've made to zero, that's dramatically reduced the administrative overhead in doing the accounts. I think we're even tinkering with the policy. Xero now has a functionality that every time you create an invoice, you can actually attach a PDF or an image to it. So we've actually started doing that a little bit for some of the conferences this year, and that was really valuable during the audit because the auditor didn't have to ask us for any invoices. They were all there just waiting for him. So we might actually make that a more ingrained policy in the future. Upcoming policies, the biggest one is probably the Code of Conduct. That's gone through a couple of cycles. It is one of those contentious things in our community, so we'll probably go through at least another cycle, if not another two, I would say, before more people, let's say, are happy. I don't think we'll ever get everyone happy. Linux.conf.au bid process, that's sort of done, although it's a bit of a living document. And donations and grants policies we're still working through. Conferences, we run a whole heap of conferences now. LCA, obviously, the biggest and the first. We're now doing Drupal Down Under. I've only mentioned the ones that happened in 2011 in the report. So Drupal Down Under, WordCamp Melbourne, WordCamp Gold Coast, PyCon AU. Of those for this year, LCA obviously is happening again. Drupal Down Under happened last weekend. WordCamps, we'll probably have another one next year. I think we've got some people that are interested. And sorry, this year. Sorry. And PyCon is happening when? August. In Hobart, yep. Yes, I think that's been really positive. We've got a couple of other open source communities that are starting to approach us to run other conferences. So that I think that initiative that we've undertaken to help out the other conferences has been really useful. Saves them a lot of hassle in insurance and bank accounts, and that sort of thing. Linux.conf.au I won't mention because we're here and it's awesome. I'm having a great time. How's everyone else doing? Everyone liking the conference? Yay! I think the Ballarat guys have done an amazing job. As far as the council is concerned, it's been hassle-free. Josh Stewart's just popped on, every couple of meetings that the council's had just to give us an update, and there really haven't been many issues at all. 2318 bid process was finalised, I think, in September off the top of my head, and we'll announce it on Friday at the closing session. Subcommittees, yes. So Josh spent some time this year setting up a subcommittee portal on the Linux Australia website. This means that all our subcommittees now get emailed to remind them to put in regular reports. That's been pretty useful. It means that we've got sort of regular updates with what subcommittees are up to. And do they go straight to the news page, Pete? Yeah, so they get published. So if you're following the RSS feed of the Linux.org.au news, you'll get that committee information.
Sorry, not news. They have their own feed.
Their own feed, okay.
Or Planet LA.
Oh, that's right, they put on Planet LA as well. Yeah, I knew I saw them somewhere. That's been really good to see what the committees are up to. I mean, even LCA itself has been filling in those reports. Grants and donations. Every year we budget. Is that grant amount correct, Josh?
For grants and donations and sponsorships.
Yeah. Yep, it's 20k. We almost never get that high. We've actually been toying with the idea of, not even having that budget at all because it doesn't make a lot of sense really, and just taking stuff, or maybe making it smaller or bundling a whole heap together. Yeah, cool. In terms of things that we supported under the grant scheme, AGM Melbourne, Barcamp Geelong is there twice for some, but interestingly, I don't think we ended up giving them anything, right? Or they didn't want the money, or...
They said no thank you.
Yeah, they said no thank you, yeah. I wrote this report before we tidied that up. We now do secondary domain services for LUG, so if there are any other LUGs that are sick of doing DNS and would like us to do it, let us know. And Barcamp Gold Coast. We donated to the Glendale School after LCA in Brisbane. I don't know if everyone knows this, but they were the original sponsor, and they actually asked us not to give them any money and give money to the flood appeal as well. So we gave the donations that attendees at the conference made to the Premier's flood appeal, and then the usual sort of matching donation from LA went to the Glendale School, because they're a really good charity, and I think they'll do a lot of good with that money.
We donated 5K to the flood appeal and 5K to the school.
Yeah, that's right. 5K. Is that what I wrote up there? I think so. I think I fixed it up. Linux Australia also made a $5,000 donation to the ADA initiative. The ADA initiative's been going for 12 months. I think they're starting to do a lot of good. I mean, look, just looking at the increase that we've had, whether by, work that's happened before and not under the ADA initiative that Val and Mary have been doing, and now the stuff they're doing with, just the participation rate we're getting now at LCA alone, almost approaching 25%, I think is a validation of that good work that's going on. Community recognition, we kicked off the Rusty Wrench Awards again this year. That's going to be presented at the dinner. We turned that into a bit of a community aspect this year with allowing the community to nominate. In the past, it's just been picked, I think, by the council and yeah, I think that's right. I will skip over the other news, except for one. The significant part there is we purchased new hardware this year. So there's 3 brand new Cisco servers that will run the Mirror and things like the LCA staff and the mailing lists and all those sorts of things. The existing hardware was in quite a poor state. I don't think it would have lasted another 12 months. Finally, I'd just like to thank all the volunteers and all the members of the council. Without their hard work, Linux Australia wouldn't achieve much of anything, especially the volunteers that have been running our conferences. The conferences produce the profits that allow LA to do things like sponsorships and grants and other endeavours that we attempt to do. And I think the contributions of those volunteers are, just amazing. That's it. So I will move that we accept my report as read. Second by Donna. All in favour? Against? Abstentions? Excellent. Okay, next up we have, Secretary or Treasurer. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay, Secretary's report.
Nice and brief.
Use that one, it might be easier.
Yeah,
I will put a tab up. Oh, put it?
Close it all.
I hope not. I'll let Josh drive.
Did.
Oh, I did because I hit Alt F4 instead of Control F4.
Alt F4.
I guess I'll just have to do it from memory. It's a pretty brief report. The main thing. There we go. The main thing is that we now have what will hopefully be a unified wiki, so that we don't have a proliferation of wikis for various committees, various subcommittees that we all need to maintain separately, but instead we can have a single place where everybody puts all their information, which makes it easier to find for everybody as well. Secondly, memberships. I pulled a quick report out of MemberDB, which shows that we've gained 244 new members over the past year. One of the things on the agenda for the coming year is actually clean up MemberDB and put in place a procedure for expiring members and allowing members to renew the membership every year so that we actually get useful data rather than a number of people that have signed up in the past 10 years. And finally, I'd like to thank John and also Mary Gardner for making certain that we're now in compliance with the Office of Fair Trading legislation. by having filed paperwork for some years back.
Only just. We still need to file the 2010 paperwork. I tried, but then stuff wasn't signed that they didn't tell us had to be signed.
And that concludes my report.
I'll move that we accept the Secretary's report. Second by Hugh. All in favour? Against? Abstain? 1. Donna? Yeah, so we'll move on to the Treasurer's report by Josh. That works. You got me? Okay.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
It was working.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're on now.
No,
No, you know what? It's probably that mic.
You're hiding the mics. No? Now you changed them. Oh, there we go. I'm going to blame Peter for that. Sorry, AV team. Keeping you on your toes. I don't know how this clicker works, but we'll find out. So John already mentioned that we changed the financial year to make things easier for us, basically, in time to do audit and treasurer's reports and so on and so forth. We just had enough time this year, which was good. The copy that was sent to the list a week ago has had the typos amended, and the copy that's printed is the correct one, and the one that I will show you later, and I will forward that through to the list a bit later. So we continue to use new financial software. That went well for us, saving us a lot of time. I think John already touched on that, so I don't really need to go into it. We're keeping accountants to do our BAS reports, and they have been really good at doing that. I don't think we've had a late BAS since they came on board, which I also have to really thank every treasurer involved from the subcommittees for that, which is next up, because they ensure that everything in their accounts is reconciled. So we give all these subcommittees a bank account, and when they want money, they ask politely, and we give them money, and then they do their awesome things because they're pretty cool volunteers. And these are the treasurers for each of the subcommittees who do the hard work. So thanks to these guys, my job's pretty easy. I just hassle them to make sure everything's neat, and then the accountants come in and submit the paperwork. So it makes the process very streamlined, and it's well documented now. Cool, I think that's that. So budget tracking, I don't know how much we want to go into this. Basically, it's pretty much the same as every other year. I will show you a bit of a comparison in a minute. That we make, from the conferences, we end up around 30K surplus that Linux Australia gets to spend. So that's how we budget our expenses. And yeah, I think, what did we end up? We didn't end up spending all our budget from last financial year, so that was fine. If you want the details, they are in the report, because I won't go into too much detail. John did mention about the budgets, so this is the budget for this financial year, 2012 one. I should clarify, when I say 2012, I now mean the financial year from the 1st of October 2011 to the 30th of September 2012, because of the change, as mentioned before. So the grants and the sponsors / donations didn't end up in one bucket. They probably should have, and they will next time. You'll notice last year we spent $300 from the grants. What grant application we did have that was of significance, I think, was for the ADA conference or something. Well, that was a sponsorship. So we're finding that most of things come under sponsorship / donations. We had a Software Freedom Day item as well, which no one really asked for things this year, whereas in the previous year, Linux Australia gave a lot of money to people who were doing really cool Software Freedom Day things. So those two buckets, well, first of all, the Software Freedom Day bucket was dropped, so it's $0, and that's because anything for Software Freedom Day really could come into grants, and grants and sponsorships and donations should probably just be merged to a larger bucket. So I don't think we're going to go to 10K, as John alluded to. I think we will, next financial year, keep 20K between those and hope we get to support more conferences and more events and maybe, hopefully, more grants if people are doing cool things in the community. And one of the other reasons for that is as we take on board broader conferences in the open source community, we want to be able to use these buckets to give back to those, which is good to have that there. The Mirror project, I thought the bill was coming in October, so it ended up in this budget. It didn't, so that we won't spend that. We've already spent that last financial year. That's about it on the budget. Notes and figures, thanks. So yeah, I'd like to thank John. He's continued to be very helpful. Whenever I get stuck, I just go to John. He generally knows what to do, so thank you, John. And again, all the subcommittee members, and also Andrew Ruthven, who manages our accounts in New Zealand. And so that's more or less the report I gave. The one thing that's not on there, and I have to recover because OpenOffice likes to segfault, is this. So this is a comparison of all the areas that we have. So the blue is for 2010 and red is 2011, although they're labelled the same. Maybe it's the other way around. It is the other way around, sorry. Blue is 2011. The labels are a bit messed up there. So there's a few things. The one thing I didn't explain quite very well that is in the report is that our auditor has advised us to move payments for conferences that operate in one financial year out of the other by putting them in as a prepayments, an asset. So what this means is now when we go to look at 2011, we will see pretty close to the profit and loss for 2011. Sorry, for LCA 2011 because it operates in then. Whereas previously, if you looked at, November, December 2010, huge amounts of income, and then January, February 2011, huge amount of debt because that's when registrations come in and subsequently the costs of running a conference. So the one thing we do now is move everything into the one financial year, which is great. And you can see this worked. There's no LCA 2012, despite them spending money and earning money. That will show up in the next financial report. LCA 2011, that's their main bucket there. They made just over 42 according to that. However, when the auditor did it, we didn't move everything into that year. There was still some stuff that ended up being reconciled against 2010. So next time we'll work closer with our auditor to make sure that lines up correctly. So we can actually, if you take the difference between those, 2011 made roughly 30K. The actual figures are written elsewhere. I'm just going off the graph. 2010, they made a lot of money. No, not quite. It's, they weren't moved into the 1 year. So if you want to see the expenses for 2010, you have to load up 2009 reports. What this means is at the moment it's a little bit useful. We can see in 2011 we made a little bit less than 2010, but as we go forward and continue to use Xero, we should end up with actually usable data because it will track things to the correct year. I hope that makes sense to people. Yes, questions? Sorry, that is LA. So Linux Australia spending all the money made by other people. That includes bank fees and insurance and that sort of thing. Yes?
In one sentence or less, can you explain the LCA 2007?
Oh, yes.
I'll do that one. I'll do that one.
Oh, well, yeah. It's his fault.
It's not my fault.
Well, you got a mic.
I've got a mic. So Jamie Wilkinson came up to me about a year ago and said, I was moving house and I found this bag of stuff and in it was the LCA 2007 cash box from the Rego desk, and it still had, what, $3,500 in it?
3.5K.
So yes. So it means that...
Well, we haven't set him the bill for the maturity of that deposit.
So A, Jamie is very honest, and B, LCA 2007 made more money than we thought it did.
Well done, John.
Yes, yes.
You didn't make it.
Do I need to present the audit now? Or do we want to accept it and then present it?
I'll just run through it really quickly and then we'll...
Oh. Excuse me 1 minute.
Well, actually, there's probably not much point putting it up on the projector.
Okay.
Just...
We have an audit. It says the same thing. You know, our accounts line up. We will submit it to fair trading next week, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah. Week after.
Yeah, week after. Oh, John wants to be lazy. Yes, AJ. Yes, as I mentioned before, there were changes to the post to the list, and I will post the correct one. This one here is correct.
The changes, none of the totals actually changed. They're all around, some things were in the wrong buckets, but everything effectively adds up to the same amounts.
Yeah, it all adds up. It was just a typo in which account he moved things from.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the audit opinion was unqualified?
I'm sorry.
Were there any qualifications on the audit opinion?
No.
Yeah, it's like there's probably a copy still up there.
Yeah. So any other questions on the finances or the state? I perhaps maybe should just quickly show our equity, where we stand. We have just over 300k, so that's good. Sophie? Oh, I thought you put your hand up. This has been roughly the same figure for a while. LCA, or LA, has been able to operate on the profit of its conferences, and most conferences end up pretty neutral and money goes back in the community, so it's all good. Yep.
How much is the dealers?
They are listed in there.
There is somewhere.
I can't read. There you go. So the 2010 check account is New Zealand, so there's 3.5k there. Yep. Any other questions?
And I'm pretty sure that's an Australian dollar equivalent, I think.
Yes, these are all converted amounts. There's a little footnote there that will say this is the exchange rate as of this date, so if you really want to, you can probably work out how much money we really have. But
Cool.
Cool. All right.
Okay, I'd like to move that we accept the Treasurer's report. Someone seconded. I'll pick AJ. All in favour? Against? Abstentions? One abstention. I'd also like to move that we accept the presented auditor's report. Any seconds? Terry Dawson. All in favour? Against? Abstentions? 3 abstentions? No, 1, 2, 3, 4 abstentions. Okay. Right. Okay, that's the Treasury bits out of the way. I'll leave that bit to Terry. Okay, that's pretty much all the business from the previous council. I'll invite Terry Dawson, our public officer, up to announce the results of the election. Yeah. What? I'm going to get Terry to do it. I think that makes more sense. Yeah, you do 6. Can you bring up the election results? Yes? I'm going to get Terry to do it. I don't want to endorse myself.
Yes, you do. You're just not going.
Terry, you want to just do item 6? Yeah. While you're waiting.
Sure. All right. While this is happening, I'd like to move that we accept the activities of the outgoing 2011 council. Seconded. I actually don't know who that is. Oh, g'day, Andrew. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? John's abstaining. All right, that's carried. Okay, so where am I at with this?
The screen is probably easier.
Oh yeah. Use the arrow keys on the laptop.
Yes, the laptop.
I'll help.
The one that's actually a laptop.
Right.
As opposed to a
I'll scroll as you need me to.
I actually don't have glasses, so I can't read them.
Oh,
It's embarrassing. All right, so it's kind of my job to fill the gap between the outgoing council and announcement of the new council. I'd firstly like to move that we thank the outgoing council for 2011. I think they've done an enormous amount of work, and it's great in getting everything organised. Oh, that's much better. Okay, so sorry. Right. Yes, indeed. Okay, so the results for the election are in. Which one are we looking at? Okay.
it's the same one. I'll scroll up.
All right, cool.
Similar.
So for president, John Filito was successfully elected. For vice president, Michael Carden was successfully elected. For secretary, Peter Leaverdink was successfully elected. For treasurer, Joshua Hesketh was re-elected. And of the ordinary committee members, there were actually only 2 candidates who accepted a nomination, and they were both elected. They're James Polly and Bianca Gibson. Given that there's a vacant ordinary committee member position, the Constitution allows for provides for us to call for nominations for anybody that wants to fill the role. Are there Joshua?
I would like to nominate Francois.
All right, Joshua has nominated Francois. All right, and Donna seconded that. Are there any Francois? Do you accept the nomination? Okay, great. So Francois has accepted the nomination. Are there any other nominations? All right, Clinton Roy. Sorry, I don't know your name. Right, Russell's nominated Clinton Roy and seconded.
James Asepi.
All right, James Asepi has seconded that. Clinton, do you accept nomination? Where are you? Claire, Clinton's accepting nomination. All right, sorry, your name is?
I'm Russell Coker.
All right, Russell Coker is nominating. Sorry. Sorry, I can't hear you. Annabelle. Seconders? All right, Russell has seconded that. Anna, do you accept? Yep. Are there any other nominations? Okay. All right, given that we have so many nominations, and we our practice is to vote online, I propose that we defer election and conduct the election online. All in favour? Yes, yeah, I do want a second actually. All right, thanks AJ. AJ seconds. All those in favour? Against? One against. I'm not sure that the membership that weren't able to make it would agree with that.
40 people voted.
Yeah, this is the other point.
Which is what? So look, I had a discussion with a number of people in the council. I just know that if we vote here and now, we will just get a lot of flack on the mailing list. Yeah, and I'm pretty sick of putting up that flack on the mailing list.
True.
And we've just done a vote on it, which has been passed,
Yeah.
carried fairly well.
Accepting the online, did we
change the constitution that we don't have to vote to accept the online election?
Sorry, that won't run that past me again. Did we?
Change the election. Did we change the constitution so that the online election is supported by the constitution?
Absolutely, because that's how we just ran an election.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in that case, I think we should welcome the incoming council.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks very much, Terry. Round of applause for Terry. Okay. Keeping in mind that it is 6:20 and the bus goes at 1:45. Any general questions from the floor? And here is a microphone, if we have any.
I'll run the mic and steal the first one.
Awesome.
I just want to repeat one statement that I made post the SGM, where the sole person who attended that wasn't affiliated with Google, either by working there or having partner family work there, was Jeff Waugh. I know obviously many people are not based in Sydney and certainly couldn't ask them to travel for that, but I'm sure we have more people in Sydney, and it was fairly disappointing actually. Although I do work at Google, I had to travel to go to that because I wasn't working that day. Yeah, would like to see more people engaged in the organisation.
I think on that particular one, we had a fair number of proxies. I can't remember how many proxies, but roughly, 20 or so proxies. And I actually think the majority of our community just didn't see it as a contentious issue. I mean, there were some vocal minority that had large disagreements with what we were trying to achieve, but I think most people just thought it's going to get passed, it's going to carry, there's no point in me turning up. That is admittedly potentially dangerous if you disagree, or even if you agree, because you might not have enough people that agree turn up, but yeah. Question from James? Yes, there were people watching on IRC, and we did stream it, that's true. I think we did eventually end up taking questions from IRC, even though that wasn't quite the intention. Mike?
Peter, can I move my motion now? Disembodied voice.
Yes, you may.
I move that it be noted that Jamie Wilkinson is hilariously honest.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Unless it started with 7,000.
All in favour?
Don't minute that bit.
All in favour that Jamie Wilkinson is hilariously honest? Against? Abstentions? 4 or 5 abstentions, maybe 7. Kathy?
Thanks, Julian. One of the things I'd just like to reiterate is thank you enormously to the Council, and in particular the huge amount of work you did in redrafting the Constitution this year. I do have a question for the Council. One of the things that I would really dearly love Linux Australia to do perhaps a little bit more of is around strategic planning, and perhaps putting together a 5 to 10 year strategic plan for where you'd like to take the organisation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering perhaps whether this had been previously considered.
So 5 or 10 year strategic planning, no. And I'd question whether it's worth focusing that far ahead. 2 to 3 years, I think we should. We do a little bit of that at the council face-to-face meetings. Nothing particularly structured. I suppose a little bit.
I would contend that we at least do a 1 to 2 year.
Yeah, I mean, we do. What's coming for the coming year? What do we want to do in terms of, are we going to focus on subcommittees? Actually really well there. This year we pretty much tried to focus. We didn't do a great job, but tried to focus on policy work. So there is a little bit of that, but maybe we could do that a little bit more openly and get some community involvement. The thing that I'd proffer there also is, and you're wonderful, Kathy, but that sounds really bad. Community involvement is a big problem for the council. The problem we have at the moment is it's the council doing the majority of the work. Excluding conferences where we have lots of volunteers and people running conferences, that's great. We've got an admin team, they do a pretty good job. There's the Mirror team, they do a great job. But in terms of things like advocacy, the secure boot stuff, media, press, we'll occasionally say, hey, we need some volunteers, and invariably we almost always hear nothing. And I think the key thing there is, if we could have 1 or 2 very interested people that go, you know what, I care about media, I think it's important. I don't have a lot of time, but I'll spend 2 weeks setting the groundwork so it's easier for other people to join. That sort of stuff would be really great. AJ?
If you wanted to volunteer for
if you wanted to volunteer for the advocacy group, what would you actually end up doing?
Oh, you mean like the press sort of media sort of stuff?
If you wanted to advocate to government or to businesses or whatever you're suggesting that people do, what would they actually do?
The biggest one right now we've got is media. And that's in terms of, I mean, classic example is you've probably noticed that we haven't had a council news since Mary left, because she was championing that. So if we had a couple of people on the media team that, I mean, invariably every single time we do a council news report and send that to the list, we'll get 1 or 2 news articles out of it in the press. Because the journos do read that stuff, see the summarised thing, and either give me a call or someone else a call. So media is the classic one I'd love some people to work on. You know, and that would involve getting media contacts together, putting some information in a wiki, writing press releases, you know, just the basic stuff that, like, you know, I've got 10 email addresses in a text file that I use, and they're the people that I email. But if we did that a little bit more coordinated, I think we could get our message out there more. The other one, I suppose, that crops to mind initially is sponsor work. What we'd love to do is take some of the load of sponsorship off all the conferences that we do, and have more year-to-year involvement by people, so it's not a brand new contact calling up HP, IBM, Google every single time and for every single conference we do. So if we had some continuity there, that would be great. That takes a very special type of person that knows how to deal with corporates, but you know, that would be interesting. James? Yeah, exactly. So it would be great if we could take the national, you know, like when you're talking IBM, HP, those guys, bring that into LA and then just have the local teams dealing with local sponsors. Yeah, and still have the teams do like the sponsorship pack, and then it's just the other team like sort of selling that. Any other questions? Yes?
I've just got a suggestion for the Linux committee and everybody here. I think it would be really lovely to see diversity grants for students, female students. Python was sponsored this year, corporately sponsored, and I think there's about 7 grants. I've mentioned it to OSDC and they're up for it, like for instance internal funding, or I mean, may like to consider corporate funding as well, but it would be nice to see sort of a consistency in the open source arena towards throwing in a free ticket and helping out with some basic accommodation here and there.
Absolutely. So did we put together the diversity policy? No, we haven't finished it yet. Yeah, so no, but part of the conference policy says that we expect them to think about diversity and come up with a diversity plan. So that's why some of the conferences like PyCon have done that sort of stuff. Did Drupal Down Under do anything, Donna, specifically? No, okay. It was, I was there. And look, that's just a matter of conferences or other groups putting in a grants request. And you know, if anyone, and I suppose you could almost put in a grant request on behalf of another group. If you saw a conference and you thought diversity there was important, you could say to us, hey, maybe we should put some money towards that, and that's something that we could do. Donna?
So it's my understanding that currently Linux Australia does not support grant requests for travel funding to go to conferences. So I think that could be a conflict there that need to be addressed.
Yes, I agree. James?
Talking about funding and things like that, I know I spoke to Josh early this year. We've obviously been trying to revive Plug over the last year and a half or so.
Yep.
And one of the things we did is speak to Josh about getting a complimentary hobbyist ticket to LCA, and we raffled that off to try and revive Plug. And amongst all the rest of the efforts, we've managed to quadruple the size of Plug over the last year.
Yeah, that's been really good effort.
But it's a simple idea, and hopefully the cost isn't too much, but maybe that's something worth doing, is getting every lug in the country and giving one ticket and trying to base an event around it and revive the lugs, because I think all of us have been suffering with reduced people, as we said for the SGM, not a lot of people turning up. A lot of our meetings, you know, the community is there, but not a lot of us are getting together for our actual community that's around us. We're doing it all online, but we don't get together to share a beer other than here at the conference. So just propose that as an opportunity to give to everyone.
Donna?
Yeah.
I think that's an absolutely excellent suggestion. I'd hazard a guess that Linux Australia is now in such a strong financial position that it should strongly consider reviving the regional delegates program and fund each, fund someone from each state to go to LCA.
Yep, I think that's a good idea. The other...
That is a motion at this forum.
I'll put it on the agenda so it gets discussed at the face-to-face. I wouldn't want to make a decision on it here that we're definitely doing it. Yeah, someone?
Sorry, I'm upstairs.
Right. Yes.
We got it from Google. Google is really interested in helping with diversity.
Yep.
There's a lot of sponsorship out there if you're interested in talking to companies in the IT world.
Yeah.
Because they're interested in getting more diversity candidates, regional, female, other types of diversity candidates to conferences.
Yeah, that's actually one of the points I was going to make, which is why I don't want to make the decision here, is that I think absolutely we could fund it, but I think that should be last resort. We should try and find a sponsor to fund it instead. I'd always like to spend other people's money.
Because that's good for the sponsor.
Yeah, it's good for the sponsor, it's good for us. We can use money on other things where it's hard to find sponsorship. The front.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that at LCA 2011, we did have some tickets and some competitions to encourage students to be more involved. And we got a few responses, a few of them quite good. So I'd like to see it go further, but it's not by any means a magical cure-all to the declining.
Well, look, that's one problem that I think I've been saying. Maybe I don't have the right perspective, but my memories of SLUG and I think some of the other lugs, let's say 10 years ago now, was that the heart and spirit and the growth of the lugs was around the universities, and I just don't think we're seeing that anymore. I go to a SLUG meeting and I just don't see any university students. Well, that's part of it. We're sort of mainstream. So I think a lot of stuff has moved online, so maybe that makes lugs less relevant.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff online now. Everybody's in forums, IRC or Twitter or whatever.
It's all Facebook's fault.
The other angle on that is that Linux is not necessarily the centerpiece of open source.
Yep.
And everything else is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it. You got Firefox, Chrome on desktop. You got OpenOffice.
A pretty good Firefox plugin developer.
Yeah.
So this is perhaps a little bit of a change of topic, but these are great things that the council could do, and we'll look at doing, I'm sure. But it'd be awesome for more volunteers from the community to do it, more people to be involved. Personally, I take the standpoint that Linux Australia is really good at enabling people to do things. They enable the conferences to run, the subcommittees to run, and I think they should be enabling people to do a lot of the other work as well, rather than having to do it themselves. So just my personal note.
Okay, I think we'll take 2 or 3 more questions and then we'll wrap it up so we can get on buses if we're going to the PDNS.
Sorry, it's not a question, it's just still on this diversity thing. I ran the diversity program in 2005 before Sun stopped sponsoring it. And let's be honest, the biggest problem was a lot of states had one nominee. So I think even before we go and find someone to pony up the money, I think if you know people who would benefit from that sort of thing, talking to them early and often has got to be helpful. Yeah, the Sun Regional Delegates program, there were some states where there was one person nominated, and that was kind of painful at the time.
One in the middle here. Always in the middle.
For those upstairs, you probably want to run down and put your name on the attendance list as well.
I'm involved with some committees on Football Brisbane, and I could just give you a little bit of insight because we're going through the exact same problem you guys are. Right. We've got 100,000 players in Brisbane, but barely any volunteers. There's a couple of things that we found that helped the situation. First one was a strategic plan, not 10 years, but 5 years.
Yep.
The first strategic plan was to write position descriptions, so that people who did want to volunteer didn't feel like they were just about to surrender their lives to the organisation because they didn't know what they were going to do. The strategic plan had goals, positions were assigned to those goals, and people coming into the organisation knew, right, I can do that, and my role's defined, and it's not going to creep unless I let it creep.
Yep.
So that might be one way that you guys could get some more volunteers in.
Cool. Last question. One more. Anyone? Okay, excellent. I think that is all. Okay, I move that we close. Do I need to move to close the AGM? Probably not. I'm going to close the AGM at 6:35. Thank you all.